see anything on the cameras?
Oh my god, behind you!
Dude, cut it out.
Oh my god, behind you!
Dude, seriously, stop.
Oh my god, behind you! Behind you! Behind you!
Dude, fucking quit!
What the hell did I do?
Just forget.
What are you saying exactly? Dude, that's not funny. What's not funny?
Take a tiny bite. God's probably not even looking. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. It was good, but suddenly I feel kind of scared.
You followed the shepherd. You are a fool. Follow my voice instead. You will find great happiness. Wake up, Adam. Do not make me wake the others.
Hey, I lost visuals on cam 3. You think you could check that out?
Hello, I fed you, dude. Hey, is there any Charlotte shit that you want me to drive for this morning? What time is it at? Yeah, I can do it. I'll do one round of League of Legends and I'll wait for it. I'll probably come home and take a nap after I drop her off. Okay. I had a good time with Boomer.
Yours, but the
I carried his
where
ass.
You can see the villains are much easier.
Not what you want to hear in the morning, I bet, but still.
Maybe this is the villain incoming.
I watched his Watch the Mandela catalog. You'd enjoy it, I think, still. Potentially. Hey, Flo, please stop being annoying to her.
Well, now the door is all the way open. Oh, there was that face. Oh, he's trying to fuck me. Gosh, Kaden. Weirdo, dude. Wait, what is that supposed to be? There's a door, and then it's... Oh. There's the face. Let's see it again. Patients report multiple sleepless nights after their symptoms initially become apparent. It is not difficult to avoid, however, the patient must try to actively seek it. Oh, it's Boomer again. That's not me. Image. Don't see anything there. I think they're trying to get you to like look close or some shit. 'Cause I don't see. Adam, why didn't you come back to the car after you tried talking to it? There's still nothing there.
Gotta go.
Don't act like I didn't. Don't know you stare at these stupid pictures all day. I know you're reading this. Look, man, I'm hungry and I don't want to leave without you. I'm kind of worried. I don't know what you're so busy doing in there. Just come out to the car and let's go get a pizza and then come back home, please. Do you want to look? The locked door is open. I finally hear the cat. It's meowing. Call me on the radio and you can come help me with this. Have you seen the video of the ghost doing the girl against the wall and the girl and he took my beat? Nothing is worth the risk.
don't know what you want from me. I'm as serious now as I've ever been.
My favorite color is green.
Are you fucking with me? Were you being serious? I get that I screw around sometimes, okay? But that's just what I do. Well, maybe it shouldn't. Look, man, I'm just devastated that I'm not as broken as you still are with everything that's happened, and I'm sorry that I can't keep helping you carry this burden. What does that have to do with anything? I'm reaching my fucking limit here. These things have taken so much away from us. You
The whole movement of anger.
away from us. You
Yo.
Hey, what's up?
Not too much, man. You?
Hannah's still sleeping. I think I only have time for one. Yeah, I only have time for one game. I'm gonna. Well, it depends. Hannah's gonna maybe take her friend to work, or I'm gonna take her friend to work. We'll see. It's just.
Yeah. One's fine with me. I should be sleeping.
Okay.
I got a conference call at 2:30 tomorrow, so I was like, I need some time to see what this new season's like.
It's the same old shit. Just a new pin for players. Emerald pin.
I was just like, yeah, I gotta try it out. And then like this thing right here, I came across a while ago, and then it's like jugglers are bitching about like, if you just want to like help your team and shit, just play Nunu and Ivern. And I was like, oh, that sounds perfect.
Actually, I haven't said this before. I really like the Nunu with Ivern. Normally, I see it from him in support role. But yeah.
Yeah. Nah, mid's hot. I'll be coming to help you out.
Yeah. We have such an invade strong team. What the hell?
Ooh. I tread lightly so as not to hurt the dandelions.
Jesus, we're going in far.
Every river reaches the ocean in its own way.
Minions have spawned.
That was way too fast. That's not funny.
Yeah, I have to at least let Leona walk up a little bit.
I think
I want to put my toes in the river.
Oh, okay. We got the Cane Flash.
Nice.
Be peaceful, Brambleback.
So they're not doing red anymore. I think I'm gonna try to invade.
I should go swimming later. Oh! Gotcha! You know me, Blue. Laugh like a hyena, and friends will gallop to your side.
Not taking too long, maybe. Let's see.
I am never lost in the wilderness, only in conversation.
I should be okay. Well, sure, I'll give you a shield to go in there.
Somebody need a little.
Which is upsetting me if I need to back up. I'm way too low HP, but not enough to do. Yeah.
I did my job.
Yeah, you did. You really did. So I did this clear path. I got 5 cans to go get.
Rinse like a snail, and you will never twist your tail. Say hi to your spawn.
No shit, no shit, I'm cat food, no, no, no.
An ally has been slain. Enemy double kill.
Bro, I've been playing so many games, and this is the first time fighting a cane in a long time.
Oh, I know. I feel like you avoid that for quite a bit.
Ally has been slain.
Animals have more to offer than warm pelts and
I'm gonna go behind him. Oh, what's the kill?
You have slain an enemy.
Oh shit! He never hit me. I thought for sure he hit me once.
ha! Woohoo! Hide, Krugs. Run back to your wife. One day, I'll root in one place and be everywhere.
Well, damn, he's losing his jungle for being there.
Gotcha! May you blossom.
I love doing this, just TPing or recalling out with the smite on.
This looks like it's going to grow on me.
Katarina's walking.
Daisy stampede when no one is watching.
Bro, okay, I was about to say.
I'm coming to cover you if Katarina does something crazy. Oh, she went top. I'm being foolish.
The cleverness of mushrooms always surprises me.
I think it was sorcery.
I gift my spark. Brush just tickles my fancy.
He says
An
shh.
enemy has been slain.
Quiet boomer.
That's fucked up.
He's doing great. Like,
I love playing
I
with
leave
him.
my roots?
Yeah, they're fucking doing it.
Thank you, dear wolves.
I'm gonna clear my way.
Let's see how it's falling.
I got 2 guns and a shield. I
There's a
find
king.
that the stranger life gets the more instant.
I'm fucking him up. But now there's a Draven on me.
Sometimes I need to treat myself.
I'm fucking up my Daisy usage. Daisy's dead.
Use this gift well. Life is such a strange world.
But you guys get 2, maybe all 3. Oh. Just go get 2, maybe all. 2 for 2.
Killing spree.
Is that what it is?
I could have done a lot better with my Daisy usage there.
That old body was getting creaky.
Like, frighteningly better. I am bamboozled and ashamed.
She trying to
Sun
bait me.
and rain are the
That is
only
working.
magic I need.
What'd you say?
I said she trying to bait me.
Found any good crawdads lately, Scuttle? Let me know if you do. Blue stunning as a beauty truly is. Trees love tickling each other's branches. I get the feeling dragons don't like me too much. Oh well.
That might be able to take it off.
Man, I don't see such commitment on my ADCs usually.
Right.
Nothing beats the smell of vegetation.
And go repay the favor.
Don't play possum. Daisy hates possum. Gotcha. I grow my own food. I think Daisy has a crush on you. I follow only the sun. And sometimes the river. This one time, a scorpion.
An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain. An enemy is unstoppable.
Damn, this bitch really did take a lot of my jungle. I don't even know how low he is, or if he is low.
Everything
might be dead.
An enemy has been slain.
That wasn't really a good fight for me. Daisy's almost gone anyways.
Bye, Daisy. Do not linger here. Ladybugs should really befriend inchworms. Oh, hello. I wonder what adventure today has in store.
Team's 1-4. Yeesh.
Yeah, he's a weak lane. A weak side, but...
Yeah, that's what's kind of Katarina fed, I'm seeing. Here goes nothing. Oh my god, there's Katarina.
I love how the grass is fluffy on it. Watch out! Daisy Stampede!
I hate it. I fucking hate it.
Why is he pinging me?
Okay.
I'll save you, Willem. I'll save you.
The end of life is filled
Wow.
with life.
This Teemo's blaming us. Like, this is an evil Teemo. No, it's an alternate Teemo. What's up, dude?
A happy little
He said those are
crowd.
his chickens now.
Oh, fuck him.
Don't stay long, wolves. Hunters overrun the forest. I'm having another eye-opening day.
The enemy is godlike.
I don't even have Daisy for 15 more seconds.
Who bent your antenna? I wonder what the ducks are plotting today. Hey there! Never trust a butterfly with a secret.
Should I wait for you? Yeah, come. I'm being spotted. I goofed. Kane's annoying. I gotta get good at remembering just like the whole wall. This is all his zone, I think.
Your turret has been destroyed. Turret plating will soon fall.
Thanks. I can't even get to my. There's no wolves there for me to get to. But to like link closer.
No one who wanders is ever truly lost.
Alright. I'm kinda just waiting on Jin to get back to Lain, so after I do this top clear, I guess.
I got 2 thumbs and a shield.
Holding these minions
It's
back.
reassuring how alone we aren't.
Coming.
Well, fuck you.
Yeah.
I tread lightly so as not to
Legendary.
We're gonna go after Katarina still?
Oh no, I'm out.
I see.
Daisy,
I can head that way and eat.
Gotcha!
I just got her.
Oh, you're a monster.
Every river reaches the ocean.
Ulti coming towards you?
Whole team coming towards me, you said? Shit.
May I
I
come
want
here,
these croaks. Oh, okay. I see one there.
The dirty Draven ulti.
No. You thought that.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, I'm not voting yes. Not yet.
Yeah, fuck that kid. Gets reported at the end, that's what he gets.
True.
Bleed for them. I want to put my toes in the river.
I gotta get better at landing with Qs.
Depends when you're forced in position. This.
Your turret has been destroyed.
I should go swimming later.
That's bad.
Enemy double kill.
Shit.
Oh, Draven hurts.
Yeah. No, that was that sucked.
I should have known that. Well,
Too mad about game state, but doesn't even have 78.
man, we got Jin to 4 and 3 too. Like it was looking so good.
I know, like.
Your inhibitor has been destroyed.
It was like, you know, these kills are still kind of even with an anchor top side, and it's just doesn't mean jack.
Laugh like a hyena, and friends will gallop to your side.
Oh, you guys tower, he's trying.
You know, maybe bans exist for a reason. Like,
right. But who banned?
Be grateful for this moment. And this one. Oh, and this one.
but then, yeah,
And this
still,
one's good
like,
too.
if I had a real top laner, this Kane wouldn't be so hypercharged right now.
Krugs, bring it in for a cuddle.
2 inhibitors.
I am never lost in the wilderness, only in conversation. Gotcha! Gotcha!
Oh boy. Getting knocked up, they're getting knocked up, but too slow.
Why is Pain got to do pain things? Yeah, look, his name is Milf Draven. Okay, no more negative pay.
When I said I wasn't gonna surrender, I didn't know they could just take 2 inhibitors without even sweating.
Yeah, it was like the pressure we had was like honestly non-existent.
Now that the dying part's
Oh, fuck. No, I missed him. No, he went the fuck. They're sieging topside. I don't have a daisy. I'm behind.
You know, it's crazy too.
What?
I won a 3-13 game with top. So like, not that has anything to do with this game, but like, I was losing on top later, so we came back.
Oh, I still missed. Oh shit.
Oh, I would have said yes. I'm coming, get ready, bitch. You dirty slut.
Woohoo! Ooh,
You will learn what beauty truly is.
Your turret has been destroyed.
Gathering storm stack. Can win now.
Ooh, eat him.
Chop.
I'm sure they cleanse the Draven auto attack.
Ooh, almost.
You know what? I can't talk shit about that game of he's laughing too.
I live for the applause. You will die for it.
We don't get the kill?
You what?
I was like, we don't get the kill? Untriggered.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Jin's good though. Good enough.
Because we fed the fuck out of him.
Yeesh.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah.
He's like, ooh, 1 HP Ivern? And I'm like, psych, I have 500 in my pocket.
Your inhibitor has been destroyed.
I love how they think they dodge me, but then they don't.
I love how fast you drift. What the fuck? Like, you're doing laps.
Daisy stampede when no one is watching. Where did that come from? Surprises sting the most. Nature strikes us.
The explosion is nice.
Poke.
You know what I'm thinking of too? I want to like play a
Mushrooms
Moo.
always
You
surprise
wanna play Moo Moo Man?
Shut down.
But like, I mean,
I don't like Kane. Seems a little busted.
you said who?
Kane.
Oh yeah. There's a reason you banned him, right?
Yeah, it's just because Daisy is such an effective tool at stopping people from walking, but you can't punch them in the walls. Like if Daisy was ranged or something, maybe like if she could like hit them in the walls, I could deal with them better. But yeah, that'd be awesome.
Dude, look at this. We're coming back.
Yeah, we're getting gold.
Forest protect us all.
Doing it like the minions at the base.
Brush just tickles my fancy.
I rooted his butt. Nobody. Damn it, Jen. Oh, now we fuck. Never mind, we're not. We're winning. Let's go Baron. Just kidding, we'll die.
Now where did I leave my roots?
Directing.
No, I'm about to get 25 stacks though.
Hey, it's a thingy people use. Thank you. See you later, Daisy. I find that the stranger life gets, the more it seems to last.
Oh, are they on the Baron? Is this
Not
on
really.
Baron? Dun 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 dun.
Shit.
Dun, 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 dun.
You're getting shot.
This game's doing it though. Like,
watch out!
playing so good.
No, I got smited. I got smited by the sun. Beat him up. Blitz. Yeah. Now just kill the cat and kill Leona, and we go on to the hour mark. That's exactly how it's done.
Oh, I CC forever, bitch. Enjoy.
Okay. Going to the Baron. The Kane's up.
Please ass.
I'm going to the Baron.
Me too.
Meet my friend Date.
Protecting the Baron.
Gotcha! Use this gift well. Sun and rain are the only magic items.
Coming to you, coming to you. Damn it.
Dragons and void beasts are beyond my
He is ulti.
We're just dead, dude. This game is such a joke. This round of this game.
It's okay. I understand why you play with Boomer instead of me. Oh my god, this Jen's crazy.
You have been slain. An ally has been slain.
Oh my god, kill the milk.
Defeat.
Alrighty, man. It was worth a shot. But get some good sleeps.
Peace, peace.
Peace. I'm gonna wait to watch this with Boomer.
It is precisely this, though, that the historical consciousness destroys in favor of a knowledge which is sterile. One blinds some birds to make them sing more beautifully. I do not believe that today's men sing more beautifully than their grandfathers, but I do know that they are blinded early. By the vile means used to blind them is much too bright, much too sudden, much too changeable light. The young man is whipped through all millennia. Youths who understand nothing of war, of diplomatic action, of commercial policy are deemed worthy of being introduced to political history. But just as the young man runs through history, so we moderns run through art galleries. So we listen to concerts. Only may we feel that this sounds different from that, this makes a different impression from that, increasingly to lose this sense of surprise, no longer to be excessively astonished by anything. Finally, to tolerate everything. That is what we call historical sense, historical culture. Okay. The fourth problem that Nietzsche finds with historical consciousness is that we come to see ourselves as we understand more and more of the past. And we saw this with Hegel as latecomers, as epigeny, or epigony, as the last men at the end of history. We are the result of a vast sweep of history in which all great things have occurred, so that we should have the historical awareness of being a consequence, a result. And this wisdom means that we are, in a sense, old men. The youth of the creativity of our species is behind us. We stand back and reflect on what has happened. We have no creativity left. There are no new great projects ahead of us. All that is left for us is to understand what we have done. Historical education, quote, really is a kind of inborn gray-headedness. And those who bear its mark from childhood on surely must attain the instinctive belief in the old age of mankind. Historical awareness tends to make us believe that we have gone about as far as we can go. There's nothing new under the sun. And this leads us to our fifth problem, that we become ironic and indeed cynical, even about ourselves. That is because our scientific history teaches us that previous creative periods were not burdened with our historistic self-awareness as last men, as the men who have worn out their spirit and have nothing left but reflection on their past. And the historian himself must be aware that the reason other peoples were creative was because they didn't have that burden. They didn't have that awareness. So we come to be ironic even about our own historical understanding, seeing as it is absent in all creative epics. This becomes cynical with Hegelianism, which Nietzsche detested. Because with Hegelianism, we find that whatever happens to win in the process of history is proclaimed to be ordained by the world's spirit as necessary. So we become so cynical as to say whatever has won in history was right, because the rational is the real and the real is the rational. What could be more cynical than that? That is fawning upon the victors. That is saying whoever comes out on top, we will bow before you and give you the imprimatur of historical evolution. We thus get on our knees with every authority because it has succeeded in becoming an authority. Okay, what we have found with Nietzsche then is that our excess of history, our surfeit of history, has destroyed our plastic ability to grow and change. Nietzsche thinks that the antidotes are the poisons of the unhistorical and the superhistorical. Unhistorical is simply the ability to forget, to leave the past to itself and charge into the future with a naive belief and confidence in possibilities. The enemy of this forgetting is science, which is always a horizon-creating phenomenon. Forgetting is the horizon-creating phenomenon. Science would eliminate all boundaries and throws man into an endless, unlimited, light wave sea of known becoming. Now, the superhistorical is the realm of the stable and the eternal. It's the positing of great ideals and eternal verities. It is stable, and it is being without becoming. It is the realm of art and religion, of timeless essence and the universal. And it is the enemy of science. A history that served life would thus fuse the unhistorical and the superhistorical. Unlike science, it would eschew the claim to objective truth, in the sense of univocal interpretation, the one correct account, and the induction of general laws. General laws of history would be incredibly dull and trivial, Nietzsche says, if we could discover them. They probably have to do with diet. And Nietzsche thinks that history is always perspectival. It's always a question of your interests, of the perspective you come from, of your goals. Rather, a history that served life would be like art, in creating a unity and thematic coherence, which exemplifies the general in the particular and the profound in the simple.
I don't
It would
know.
allow us to
Here's a
forget what
bit,
needs to
and
be
here's
forgotten,
this if you want.
i.e.,
Right.
the suffering
I
and
don't know where he
injustices
is.
of little men, of the average person. And let us focus on the great man of the past as an inspiration for the production of greatness ourselves, so that we shall not
I
be
gave
a
him some
piggy
tuna
and
and the
the
other little
last men.
bag that you had,
Such
so
a history might be
they're a little bit well
self-consciously
fed.
mythopoetic or
They're
critical,
they're probably pretty well fed.
with an eye
They're just
towards the
they're
practical
dramatic.
goal of life and health. And I want to end by suggesting examples. Examples of the former, of a mythopoetic history, might be Thus Spake Zarathustra by Nietzsche, or Ecce Homo, his own mythopoetic autobiography. An example of the latter, a critical history, would be The Genealogy of Morals, a scientific analysis of the beginning of our moral notions of good and evil, good and bad. Or The Birth of Tragedy, philological research into the fusion of Dionysic and Apollonian modes in Attic tragedy. All four of these histories are at the same time as critical, antiquarian, and monumental. Thus, Nietzsche himself, as an historian, and most of his works take the form of history, never practices one history at the expense of the other, but all in the service of life. Immanuel Kant was far and away one of the most important and profound thinkers in the modern epoch. In many ways, he sets a sort of temporal boundary to the Enlightenment. He is, in many ways, I would argue, the last of the great Enlightenment thinkers, and is in many ways a transitional figure. What follows Kant will be the rise of Romanticism in the literary world, and its philosophic equivalent, German idealism, in the philosophic world. I would urge, as Descartes is a fundamental, or represents a fundamental conjuncture in the history of philosophy, and in fact is usually used as the demarcation of the beginning of modern philosophy, so Kant also represents a similar demarcation within modern philosophy. And in fact, it is fairly standard in histories of philosophy to talk about the pre-Kantian and post-Kantian period. Kant was in many ways one of the most systematic and complete philosophers, had an aesthetic theory, a moral theory. What I'm going to discuss with you is his epistemological theory and his critique of metaphysics from a very famous work known as the Critique of Pure Reason. I will try to give you very much a sort of a skeleton outline of the argument of Critique of Pure Reason. It's an immense book, close to 800 pages, extremely technical, but I think the overall point is not that difficult to get and is very much fundamental to all the philosophic speculation that follows Kant. Everyone is very much dealing in what I would call the Kantian problematic. Kant is in many ways the first of the modern foundational thinkers. in the sense that he wants to build, before he arrives at any sort of philosophic speculation, he wants to begin with an absolutely certain foundation upon which all of the rest of his philosophy can be recursively built. And that foundation should be purely logical, and it should tell us, in fact, what can and can't be known on a purely formal level. Kant was profoundly affected by the writings of David Hume, as I mentioned previously. He had a fairly long philosophic career before he read Hume, never published anything of much significance.
The pictures I uploaded.
Then read Hume and claimed that Hume awoke him from his dogmatic slumbers. He had been very much...
I gotta pull him up again just to look at him on the big screen. Oh, this is fun. I didn't even hide it. It got like moved down. Move it up. Move it up. It's like moving around Buffalo servers and stuff. Yeah, I'm up there. Kitty Bliss. And all sorts of stuff. I bet. If you live there. This is a...
Yeah.
I'm at my limit. I'm very tired. The only existence by God. The only that I've Don't you feel silly? I'm very tired. The only existence.
Oh, wait. Penny's moving. Damn it, Penny.
Hold the fuck up! I'm the fuck up. Hold me.
Don't you feel silly? Don't you feel stupid?
Fuck the government.
Run with scissors.
Go ahead. Ignore me all you want. I'll talk to myself. I'm insane. Please apologize before my face goes might be too powerful with serotonin. I'll ask. Guys,
That's where you got that from.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Kitty.
Yeah, well, can a mentally ill person do this? Hungry. Eats of the government.
Dear God, suitably left us in a hot car.
Unfortunately, due to personal reasons.
By way to have an intellectual conversation with your mom.
I'm an idiot, but at least I'm not stupid.
It's time to disappear. Oh my gosh, that was great. But now that I have a penny in my lap, let's look at the penny. Oh man. She's so tired. She's covering it. She's so cute. Yeah, there is. And she just got laying there. Gosh, I love you. And she spilled herself into my lap. Poured herself. Oh, and she's up now.
Raised and taught in both Lutheran pietism, but more significantly in that continental rationalist tradition, which in Germany is best represented by Leibniz. And it was only through reading very small snippets of Hume that he began to see that the whole rationalist project was essentially dogmatic and uncertain, and in fact intensely problematic. What he attempted to do with Hume was to respond to Hume's claims, specifically his skeptical conclusions, in such a way as to undermine those conclusions without rejecting his fundamental insights. So he wants to get beyond that sort of empirical skepticism without at the same time falling into the trap of dogmatic rationalism. In fact,
we might. That sounds like not a bad idea.
I would urge that Kant, at least in the critique of pure reason, represents an attempt, and I think a fairly successful attempt at that, to synthesize the rationalist and empiricist traditions. If you try to summarize those in a nutshell, what you get is that the rationalist tells you your knowledge comes from your reason, from your pure faculty of reason in your mind.
I think you are
all of our knowledge and certainty comes from that faculty.
You put your point together.
The empiricist says no. That faculty isn't even faculty so much as just
communicating to him well.
Say, I might take a nap. Sort of the manipulation of symbols according to very precise grammatical rules. Our real knowledge of the world comes from our senses, from experience. So Kant, in many ways, quite sensibly argues the real truth of epistemology will certainly include both elements, which is to say we can have no knowledge without experience. The empiricists are absolutely right there. But in a way, Hume has shown us that experience will not give us enough, right? Because we wound up with such conclusions that, for instance, causality is just custom. It's habitual, and there's no rational basis for it. So here we see an attempt to synthesize these two great traditions of the 2 centuries preceding Kant. And Kant rephrases this problem in terms of what he considers the critical question, specifically for philosophy, and that is whether metaphysics can be a science. It's quite clear that it hasn't been a science up to this date. That if one compares Newtonian physics, on the one hand, to, say, Cartesian dualism or Plato's theory of the forms, there's not very strong family resemblance between those two sets of doctrines. One would certainly have no reservations calling the Newtonian theory science, and yet would have great reservations saying the same for either Descartes' dualism or Plato's doctrine of forms. And he wants to ask if, first of all, if it is possible to have a science of metaphysics, whether it can be proven to be possible or proven to be impossible once and for all. And specifically because he's concerned about 3 metaphysical issues which he thinks are the most important issues in our lives. And those are, whichever way they're decided, God, freedom, and immortality. And we all have a practical interest in the resolution of those questions or answers to those questions in one way or another. So for Kant, then, he rephrases that question in terms of the following sort of technical formulation, which is this critical epistemological question is how synthetic a priori propositions are possible and true. Now, that's a very difficult sort of phrase, and I'm going to try and take you through it piece by piece. First of all, you've heard me mention previously a priori knowledge, and that is presumably knowledge which, while it may be prompted by experience, is underived from experience. Okay? For Kant, he said we might come up with the following example.
Hey, what's happening?
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Hannah just left to go take her friend to work, and I'm just a little bit tired chilling. Watched Boomer watch a thing I told him to watch on his stream, and played a little bit of League of Legends with fucking Alistair, but I can never seem to win with him. We get bad teammates. We really do.
You gotta get the Boomy, man. That's the only.
Yeah, Boomer's the real carry. I'm just riding the coattails.
Is that a pop-off game with you?
Hell yeah.
It's kind of boring though. The game before that was kind of bad. Our jungler ran it down. Then I jungled again. Yep. It's funny because their jungler was like out farming me, but he's running it down.
Doesn't matter how much fucking items and farming you have, you just run it down. Game hard. Don't run down. You winding down, or were you hoping to play a game?
I'm playing a game.
I'm thinking about winding down. It's really tempting. Really freaking tempting. You want to watch? Hey, next time we watch Mandela Catalog, you think you can be there?
What's that?
So the Mandela Catalog is basically a film being made. Kat, what are you doing? It's basically a film on YouTube being made in different installments, different releases, like volumes come out. Anyways, there's a threat all around us. There are fucking who knows what, right? Like reality's fucking, we don't fucking know. Anyways, but there's alternates, and they'll try to like play psychological warfare with the person, and the goal is to have them off themselves, and then they like can be the person. And I'm not explaining it well. I'm tired. And basically, there's spooky. Oh my god, this is pathetic. So there's evil entities out to take over Mandela County, and that's where the plot and the characters all come from. And it's like based in the USA, but it's an alternate reality where like the government's warning people you're not allowed to, like we're everything with a screen is illegal now. You're not allowed to have TVs. I guess cell phones aren't supposed to be a deal, and fucking even a GPS was like illegal to like have, and they acquired one at one point in the show. So the characters are dealing with this threat, and it's spooky. Yeah. Okay. Boomer watched the first two parts of it that are like the shorter, very low budget starter bits, and now he has like two really good parts coming up. I don't know when he's going to watch them, but I'll send you the link to what he did watch and let you know when we're going to watch the future ones.
I might just have to wind down myself. My back is killing me.
It's late, right? Like, how long you been up?
Oh no, I'm staying up. I got a pack today.
Oh, okay. You and your life's adventures. I don't know what they are anymore at all. Like, I know we were talking about
adventures.
Yeah, your adventures
include playing League. That's it.
Same.
The statement that, for example, all physical events are spatio-temporal. Okay? Now, that is a true proposition. It is not derived from experience, because any thought or any possible event you can imagine, even in imagination, will be spatio-temporal. And we oppose that, in terms of contrast, to, say, an a posteriori proposition that is purely derived from experience. For example, all U.S. presidents are male. Right? There's no logical reason why that should be the case. It is possible that a woman might have been elected president previously, but it just hasn't been so. And that you can only know from experience. So that's the a priori versus a posteriori. A priori is that which, though arises from experience, is not derived from it. Now, the other part of that rather difficult phrase, synthetic. Synthetic propositions are those in which the predicate is not contained in the concept of the subject. And in fact, that's contrasted to analytic propositions where the predicate is contained in the concept of the subject. Don't worry about predicate and subject. Let's look at examples. An analytic statement would be, for example, all bodies are extended. The reason being that the concept of body includes within it the concept of extended, right? What is a body but an extended mass? Therefore, the statement that all bodies are extended is analytically true. It's true simply by understanding the meaning of the word body. If you know what body means, you know that all bodies are extended. And a very common example most people believe is analytic would be all bachelors are unmarried men. Right? If you know what the word bachelor means, you don't have to go around in experience and check out all bachelors to see if they're unmarried. If you understand the word bachelor, you know that it means unmarried man. And that's an analytic proposition. So a synthetic proposition will be one where the predicate is not contained in the concept of the subject. And for contrast, we could say, all bodies are heavy. It is conceivable that we could come across a body which had no mass whatsoever. Right? We come across a large podium which can float away on its own. The notion of heaviness is not contained in the concept of body. So then that would be a synthetic judgment. Okay. Now let's put it back together and get a synthetic a priori judgment or proposition. Such a judgment would tell us information about the world, right? Because it's synthetic, it tells us something new, but it would not be derived from experience. An example would be the statement that every event has a cause. That tells us necessary truth about the world, that all the things we experience in the world are caused. And yet, as Kant notes, Hume showed us that it could not be derived from experience. Right? That causality is nothing but constant conjunction at the experiential level.
A bit nervous.
So then the question becomes, since we know that every event has a cause, and we know that we can't derive it from experience, and we know that it's synthetic a priori, how can such judgments be possible? And I should point out that Kant thought there was a fairly large range of synthetic a priori judgments. Specifically, perhaps the most important class for him was mathematics. He thought that mathematics were all synthetic a priori judgments. They were not pure logic. And one of his famous examples is, if you take the proposition 7 plus 5 equals 12, the analysis of 7, 5, and the operator plus does not give you the answer. The answer is only done, the answer of 12 is only arrived at actually doing the calculation of working out that iterated successor operation of addition. And that's the only way you know that 7 plus 5 equals 12. So that it's not derived from experience, but it is nonetheless synthetic. It's a synthetic a priori proposition. So there's actually quite a few of these synthetic a priori propositions, and it's quite difficult to try to explain how they could be, first of all, possible, and then secondly, true. And then the way of explaining that is Kant's so-called Copernican revolution. Now you'll remember, Copernicus's breakthrough occurred by asking if, instead of taking the Earth as a motionless mass around which the heavenly bodies revolve, suppose that the Earth was in fact in motion and the sun was at rest. What would be the results of such a posit? How could we then colligate our observations? Would they be colligated more simply or less simply? And it turns out much more simply. We don't have to add epicycles to the motion of the various heavenly bodies. They're straight ellipses, which is a good reason then to say that that Copernican switch, that sort of gestalt switch from one way of looking at it to another, is justified. Well, Kant offers an analogous breakthrough in epistemology. What he suggests is, rather than having the mind correspond to objects in order to have truth, perhaps, or suppose, objects have to correspond to our knowledge. Right? In other words, instead of our minds, as it were, revolving around the physical world, perhaps it's the other way around. Our objective world actually revolves and has to conform to our minds. If that's the case, that would make synthetic a priori knowledge of objects possible. What we would argue then would be that objects cannot be objects of knowledge unless they're subject to certain a priori conditions of the human mind. And we could put it in terms of the form and matter scheme of the ancients. The matter of our objective knowledge comes from sense experience, but the form is supplied by certain a priori concepts of the human mind. Thus, the objects of our knowledge are all of our representations, as it were, are phenomena, which is to say, objects represented according to those, let us argue, a priori conditions of mind. And they are not what Kant calls noumena, or things in themselves. We never experience the world as it is in and of itself. We only experience the world as it is under our own representations of it. And that's, of course, his first important metaphysical distinction between things in themselves, or noumena, of which we are never aware, and phenomena of which we are consistently aware. Now, the form of phenomena, right, the form of our mental representations, is that which allows sense appearances, or what Kant calls sensibility, to be arranged in certain relations, in certain definite relations. And these forms are supplied a priori by the human mind. Now, Kant argues that there are two pure forms of sensibility, two sort of rubrics we impose on all of the sense datum we receive. The study of these two forms of sensibility, Kant calls transcendental aesthetic, and aptly called aesthetic because it refers to visual representations, the form of sensibility, transcendental because these forms transcend the sense datum themselves, go beyond it. And these two forms are space and time. I want to pause here for a minute to think about this. In a way, he is, again, answering Hume, right? Hume could well point out to us, we never actually experience space, do we? It has no color, no flavor, no texture. Similarly with time. So therefore, they must be, quote, a non-existent empirical phenomena, or something like that, or non-phenomena. Kant disagrees. Kant says what we really have, space and time, are supplied by the mind. The mind orders all of our sensual representations in a three-dimensional grid. It imposes it. Thus, space is not a part of the noumenal realm, of things in themselves, but rather it's part of the phenomenal realm. We take sense datum, and before we're even aware of it, before we're even conscious of it, the mind has already imposed it into a three-dimensional grid of space. Now, of course, this is very important for Kant because it allows us to explain the possibility of geometry. How can we have synthetic a priori knowledge of space in geometry? And he says it's because, actually, the very form of space is part of, to use a metaphor, the hardware of the human mind, right? So, since we have that hardware, we simply play out its, how would we put it, its logical implications, and that is simply what geometry is, similarly with mathematics. Now, the mind also orders all both sensual and internal representations of consciousness, right? Not only your experience of, quote, external phenomena, but also your psychic states of desire and one thought after another in terms of temporal sequence. And consider that each of your mental representations, both of external and internal phenomena, even of your own stream of consciousness, as it's called today, comes in temporal order. And Kant's point is that time is not something, as it were, out there. Time is one of the ways your mind, before you're even aware of it, orders all of its representations, orders all of its psychological states. It imposes time and space on them in a series of temporal relations of before and after. Now, at that point, you now have the first part of Kant's critique of pure reason, transcendental aesthetic. If you understand that argument, I think it'll make the other parts much more simple. You'll see that the same strategy is used over and over. And I'm going to use that as an excuse to try to be a bit more cursory with transcendental analytic, the next section, because it's extremely technical and abstruse, and I'll give you, I think, in your leisure, you'll have enough time to consider it and think about it and flesh it out. Basically, again, in skeletal form, the argument runs that human knowledge is a combination of both sensibility, right, which is a combination of sense datum plus those two pure forms of transcendental aesthetic, and understanding. In other words, all animals have sensibility. Humans also have understanding. We represent things in propositions. Now, if the forms of sensibility are called transcendental aesthetic, then the forms of understanding are called transcendental analytic, or better yet, transcendental logic. Now, this logic studies a priori concepts, or, quote, categories, which are necessary conditions for an object to be thought rather than simply perceived. And, of course, that's what you have on that table of categories, next to which is a table of judgments. Now, these categories function to synthesize the manifold of phenomena, right? You've got that bloom and buzz and confusion of representations between your ears as you take in sense datum, and that becomes synthesized into propositions, judgments, and claims according to the various categories. Therefore, these categories have objective reference, because objects, to be objects of our knowledge, must conform to them. In fact, objects are very much like Berkeley, sense datum plus our own parsing, our own sort of cookie cutting of it. Now, Kant argued that there were really only four fundamental sorts of categories. There was the category of quantity, which includes three elements, a triad of unity, plurality, totality. There was the category of quality, which includes reality, negation, and limitation. There was the category of relation, right, which includes inherence and subsistence. That one I think is a little bit confusing. Let me explain it. What he means by that is substance and accident, or subject and predicate. He says that's one of the ways the mind organizes judgments about relation, is in terms of that sort of dichotomy. And his point is that that's not something you find in the world. That's something that the mind imposes on our manifold of experience to create our object world. The other relation is causality and dependence. And the third of relation is of community. And finally are the modal categories, or categories of modality, possibility and impossibility, existence, non-existence, necessity, contingency. Now, what's interesting is if you look at each of these, this table of categories, you'll find that in each grouping, each triad, as it were, the first and second element take the form of what Hegel will call thesis and antithesis. They're sort of opposites. And the third category is the synthesis of those two. So the thesis of quantity would be, as it were, unity, oneness. And we saw this in pre-Socratic philosophy with the Eleatic philosophers, right? Parmenides and Zeno. Opposed to that is plurality, the quantitative pluralism that one would find in, say, Empedocles or Anaxagoras.
Fucking lies.
You contrast that, the view of the one and the many, and if you synthesize these two opposites, you get the notion of totality, the many making up the one. Right? And similarly, he thinks if you look at quality, reality is opposed by negation. If you put those two together, you arise through the synthesis of those two, the concept of limitation, etc., etc. Now, he points out that all of the acts of the understanding can be reduced, it can either be described as understanding or can be reduced to judgments. And thus, each judgment is in part the result of a category or a priori concept of the understanding. And hence you'll find on the right of your table of categories is a table of judgments, which is basically the same thing transposed into the form of judgment. Now the problem arises. How do you know which category to impose on any given representation? Kant argues that the faculty of imagination works as a mediator between, on the one hand, sensibility, right, our perception as it were, and on the other hand, our understanding. And it does so by producing something he calls schemata. And these schemata, which it produces and both produces and bears, let us know which categories are applicable for a given appearance or perception. Okay, so for Kant, a schema is a rule that specifies the production of images and which delimits a category to permit its application to appearances. Extremely abstract and abstruse. I will try to give you an example. Take the category of substance. The schema of the imagination, right, represents this substance as sort of a permanent Urstoff or substratum of change, which is capable of changing in time. So therefore, when we see a representation of something that seems to be in the process of change, our imagination produces the schema of substance, and we realize that we apply, when we see something changing, let's say a leaf turning from green to brown, we say, therefore it is a substance, something which over time changes, and then we know which category to apply. And in fact, it is that ability to know which category to apply which makes the application of the categories possible. Now, if we take these two pure forms of sensibility, right, what we call transcendental aesthetic, space and time, and these various categories of the understanding, and put them together, they comprise what subsequent philosophers would call a conceptual scheme. And the point is, I would urge, since Kant, I think most philosophers have agreed, at least for some time after Kant, that in fact the world does not come sliced and diced the way we experience it. That in fact we get a certain range of sense hits on our receptors and organize it according to just such a conceptual scheme. And it was Kant's fundamental insight first to recognize the importance of that conceptual scheme and to attribute it to, as it were, the firmware, the hardware of the human mind. And again, the key is that this all occurs before consciousness. That the brain or mind does all of these manipulations, all of these syntheses, all of these impositions before we're even aware of it. And so such conceptual schemes are imposed on our sense experience, and if you take our sense experience, add our conceptual scheme, then you get our objective world. That's just what our world of objects is sense datum plus a conceptual scheme. Now, this raises the third part of Kant's critique, something he calls transcendental dialectic. And that deals with the possibility of metaphysics. For he points something very important out. Our conceptual scheme, those categories, only apply to phenomena, right? In fact, they are what forms sense datum into phenomena. And therefore, the problem with metaphysics is it attempts to go beyond phenomena, doesn't it? Metaphysics tries to tell us that which we can't sense. It tries to tell us that which is beyond any possible experience. And while that is obviously epistemologically problematic, Kant nonetheless says, if we really want to be analytically clear about this, we have to explain, first of all, how does that ever happen? Why would this animal make such an absurd mistake to apply the categories beyond what they are categories of, phenomena, to, quote, noumena? And he argues that metaphysics arises from a natural disposition of the human mind to apply our conceptual scheme transcendentally. Right? You've heard this expression in Professor Dalton's discussion of Thoreau. And the notion was that you could apply these categories, and I think everyone has that disposition, to apply these categories beyond the realm of sense, beyond the realm of phenomena, to transcend such a realm, hence transcendentally. And in fact, what you're trying to do is get beyond the realm of phenomena to the realm of noumena, things in themselves. And the purpose is, he says, every human mind that is reflective has a desire to achieve overarching unities, completely consistent accounts. That's what we yearn for, and we're never satisfied till we get it. So we have it all sort of packed into one infinitely elastic bag. We can tie a knot on it. Anything new we find up, we just stick it in that bag and there's more room. Now, a couple points to arise from this. First of all, since our conceptual scheme is objective only for phenomena, metaphysics can give us no certain or even probable knowledge about the way the world really is. So that's the first thing he's resolved right away. Metaphysics as a science is actually impossible, and it can never give you truth about the world. We can never know noumena or things in themselves. And I think that's a sort of painful admission from Kant. But again, that's a result of his, I would urge, intellectual honesty. I don't think he wanted to find that result, but he tried to solve the problems of human. That was about as far as he could go. He had to acknowledge that it does not, in fact, give you any legitimate knowledge of the world. In fact, its pure transcendental application produces antinomies, or paradoxes. And he supplies 4 of them. I'm not going to go into all 4. I'm going to look at one, the one that seems to me to actually be something close to an antinomy. And he says, again, let's apply our notion of time transcendentally. And we come up with the idea that, as a pure transcendental proof of time, that the world must have a beginning and an end. Right? Elsewise, you're stuck with the problem of an infinite regress, right? And that is completely intellectually unsatisfactory and logically impossible. Therefore, the world must have a beginning in time. And must have, similarly, a beginning in space. It must be spatially bounded. Then he says, well, that's completely logically consistent. The problem is, so is the following proposition, which is that the world has no beginning in time and has no spatial boundary. And he says, well, why is that obvious? He says, well, think about it. If you are willing to take a look at the other transcendental perspective, the other side of the antinomy, you realize that the problem of infinite regress is not, in fact, avoided by positing a first beginning of time, because what happened before that first beginning? And it's not solved by saying there is a limit to space, because what's outside of that limit? So he says, in fact, both of those propositions are completely logically acceptable. They both seem to be true, and they're both metaphysical. And that's the problem of using transcendental dialectic, is that since it doesn't actually apply to phenomena, it can neither be true or false. It can never be verified or disproven. And in fact, leads to nothing so much as antinomy and paradox. But he does find the silver lining in the cloud. Although such transcendental dialectic doesn't give us any legitimate knowledge, it does have a very important regulative function in our inquiry. Specifically phenomenal inquiry. Take, for example, the transcendental idea of the world as a totality. Right? And this is a good point he's making. There is no reason to assume that the world is one. One could very easily say that the world is discontinuous, that laws of nature don't apply on Pluto or Mars, or that there is not fundamentally one universe. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to say because as I think Kant would argue, the very term universe, one voice or verse, as it were, reflects that transcendental dialectic working itself out in the human mind. But one needn't have that idea. But what are the consequences of having it? Something which can never be proven, may not even be true, but what are the advantages of having it? Well, if you believe that the world is a totality, that there is, as it were, a universe, that prompts us to seek for unconditional laws. That prompts us to go beyond our limited inductions and come up with, quote, laws of nature, or natural laws. So, he argues, if you did not believe that the world was a unity, a totality, Newton would never have argued that there were universal laws of gravitation. He would have said, if you sit in England, in this part of England, and observe phenomena, you will notice that from this part of England, in these space-time coordinates, these following laws prevail. But Newton's not satisfied with that. He has that transcendental dialectic going on in the back of his head, and it forces him to try and extrapolate those laws as broadly as possible. And that has an immensely valuable regulative function for our understanding and our inquiry. Another example that he points out is that whenever we have a representation, we can add to it the phrase, I think. And that is the way we come up through a sort of transcendental dialectic to posit an actual ego, a self, right, which is bearing all of these representations. And he points something out. That's a transcendental idea. I mean, he's going to be fair to Hume. If you really want to look at what the empirical ego is, all you really know about yourself is one damn thing after another. Right? You get one representation, then another representation, then another representation, and you never actually see yourself. It's just a show. And you are whatever, the screen showing the show. And Kant's point is that no one actually thinks that about themselves, but if they were limited, if empiricism were the case, and all of our knowledge derived from sense, that's the only way we could think of themselves. Hume is quite right. If you play the empiricist game out, logically, you wind up with that. Nothing but the empirical ego, one damn thing after another. Nonetheless, each and every one of us, because we have that propensity towards transcendental dialectic, posits a fundamental unity, the I, which, he says, may not be true, but has important regulative function, doesn't it? Right? It connects our life projects into something we might call biographies. It helps us recognize cultivated tastes, dispositions over time. It helps us attribute moral responsibility for action. So, again, these transcendental notions have a profound regulative function. Finally, however, we get back to Kant's main theme. What are the most important transcendental ideas? God, freedom, and immortality. And he says, what's interesting here is that the ones that really matter for us in our lives, their regulative function has nothing to do with science or inquiry in any of its, quote, pedestrian forms or technical forms. Where do they have an important regulative function? In morality, right? A moral scheme which does not allow for God, freedom, and immortality will be just that sort of perhaps sentimentalism of Hume. So, in fact, he argues that the ultimate metaphysical issues get cashed in not in science, not in aesthetics, but in morality. They have fundamentally important regulative functions. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to leave that in the very able hands of Professor Segru. What I will talk about, however, is briefly what happened to Kantian transcendental philosophy after Kant. Because what Kant argues is, as we'll remember, is that all of our knowledge applies only to phenomena, that our transcendental knowledge of noumena is not in fact knowledge at all, but simply sort of regulative heuristic principles for subsequent inquiry. And that the real world is the real world of noumena, things in themselves which we never actually are aware of. It was not a large leap for subsequent German absolute idealists to ask the question of Kant, since we never perceive noumena, since noumena have no explanatory function in our discussions. And since noumena are never experienced, what makes you think there are noumena? Why do you believe in things in themselves? And once you have asked that question, someone is naturally going to say, well, let's apply Occam's razor again and cut out the noumena. And that's the perspective called absolute idealism. I spoke to you earlier about this with Berkeley. With German idealism, it reaches a much more full sort of flowering. Because rather than saying that the ideas we get come from an external force, rather, our object world is simply our internal ideas imposed on whatever datum we have. And things in themselves, and here's the important intuition, is that the belief that there are things in themselves is the belief that although we're not aware of it, the world really is made of natural kinds. It really is parsed one way or another. Just we don't know about it. And we have to go through our own parsing, which is imposed by the mind. Absolute idealism suggests there is no reason to assume that the world is actually parsed at all, that it has any natural beginnings or endings, right? That it's all imposed. All objects are simply, nominally or phenomenally, are simply the imposition of our intellectual or mental categories on the world. That's one important implication of Kant. The next is, it will take perhaps 50 years before subsequent philosophers start studying enough of world history to realize, you know, not everybody's got this conceptual scheme. There are peoples that don't know about cause and effect, don't argue in terms of cause and effect. There are peoples who don't know about substance and accident. And then, how do we explain the fact that different cultures have different conceptual schemes? And the explanation turns out to be language, right? That language is the way we represent and posit our conceptual schemes. When you learn a vocabulary, you in fact learn a specific interpretation of the world. As Quine playfully puts it, ontology recapitulates philology. The study of what there is recapitulates the study of the linguistic posit structure of your speech community. And so that's why I stress how important Kant was. Kant made possible that linguistic turn in philosophy, which all subsequent philosophers have taken. Not because he saw the importance of language, but because he was the first to introduce the notion of conceptual scheme. And once it became clear that such conceptual schemes might in fact not be a result of mental hardware, the obvious choice was then it must be a result of mental software. And that software would take the form of different languages or linguistic communities or sociolects or idiolects.
Okay.
And so in that sense, Kant is also the forebearer to all of our modern...
I don't remember. Damn it.
Where?
Oh, recently. Forgot about the drink I had on my desk. I had a sip of that.
I have to head over to your address and bring you a bottle. You didn't hurry. Can you still hear me drink water? Did I raise my sensitivity too high?
Space AIDS.
No, Malzahar. Don't tell me hit the outplay button.
Space AIDS. I don't need that.
Linguistic philosophy.
Just hold down my...
Finally, Kant is important for one other school of thought. A school of thought that we will discuss, which is an American school of thought known as pragmatism.
Okay.
For think in a certain way what Kant is saying about transcendental dialectic and about these pure ideas, a priori notions. They're not true But we should still believe in them. Why? Because they're useful. They have an important pragmatic function in regulating inquiry and life. No one had thought to make an argument like that before. Right? You believe something either because it's true or you disbelieve it because it's false. Well, and such truth resides in a correspondence with reality. But since we know with Kant that our phenomena probably don't correspond to noumena at all, there is good grounds for saying rather than should we believe this proposition because it's true, it mirrors the world, rather we have good grounds for saying should we believe this because it's useful to believe. Does it help us perhaps prompt further inquiry? Does it help us perhaps appreciate aesthetic life more richly and fully?
right now? No, seems to be disabled.
And finally, and I would urge most importantly, does it help us create a morally satisfying universe?
Oh, I'll morally satisfy your universe. Fucking YouTube video. I'm gonna get in bed, Kiri. Good night.
Bye-bye.